Welcome to the Hunting News Podcast. I'm your host, Steven Ziegler, and I'm here with my co-host, Aaron Futrell. Tonight, we're going to be talking about high fence hunting. Specifically, one of the things we're going to be talking about is why high fence hunting is good. It's something that's not talked about very much. Most people just automatically hear high fence hunting and go, it's bad. And it's the worst.
The devil.
Yeah. And you know what? There is some credibility to that. We're going to talk about deer diseases. We're going to talk about is it cheating? We're going to talk about when it's cheating. We're going to talk about how many of you out there that complain about high fence hunting are doing pretty much the same thing. So we're going to kind of have structure this whole thing around that, because this is one of those topics where people feel very strongly about it, but I don't think that many people let me rephrase this. People who comment online don't always have a nuanced perspective on it. And I just recently posted something where there was a lot of controversy online. Like, people were commenting.
You posted something that was controversial.
Oh, I know, right? And it had to do with high fence hunting, and people got real mad. It blows up the comments. I mean, you get hundreds, if not thousands, of comments. So it's not just something that people have strong opinions on, and just the people in the comments. Like, people who typically don't comment will comment when it comes to high fence hunting.
Oh yeah.
Now, to start, we talked about this a little bit in passing, but didn't really discuss it yet. We wanted to save it for the podcast, is defining high fence hunting.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's an important place to start, because there's a lot of nuance there.
Oh, yeah. I think it's like with any other thing. You need to define your terms of what exactly are you talking about, because I think people just want to I don't want to say just people want to complain, but
no, they do.
They do, but everybody wants to complain, especially online, because it's fun.
Yeah,
and
it's fun for me, too. I do it sometimes.
But still, it's like people end up talking about completely different things, and we want to make sure this is as concise as possible. So we want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, and we define our terms so that we are clear, like, this is what high fence hunting is. It's not this. It's not this. This is what we're talking about. Like, I heard somebody says there's no such thing as a high fence squirrel hunt, because can you really, put squirrels behind a high fence? It's like, and nobody really goes after squirrels for like a trophy reason, because there's only one reason people go to a high fence.
There was one time where somebody came from New Jersey.
I thought they were Connecticut.
Oh, no, you're right. It was Connecticut. Some guy contacted us online. This is when we were running Ohio Wax Stars. This is the beginning. This is a decade ago now. We were just starting it out, and somebody sent us a private message on Facebook saying, hey, I saw you post a picture of a black squirrel, and I want to kill one. Can I come over and go hunting with you guys? Never met this guy, right? We're just young, dumb kids. It's me and your brother. And he just messages him back. Sure, here's my address. Show up with a gun, right? Yeah. And we went to your parents' house,
which is pretty much a squirrel preserve
in the middle of nowhere with a guy we'd never.
It's right outside of town.
Okay, yes, but it's a patch of woods around. Like, there's nobody's gonna hear you scream. I know that. And this guy shows up with a shotgun. We'd never met before. Had no clue who he was. How stupid was that?
Yeah, but anyways, he's a cool dude.
He actually ended up being a cool dude. He shot a couple black squirrels and
but this place, if you want to kill a squirrel, you want to go get your limit of squirrels. You go there, because nobody's besides us, when my parents bought the place, have ever squirrel hunted these woods, and there are squirrels everywhere. It's nothing but a hickory woods. There's hickory trees, and I think there's some beech in there, and it's just like loaded with squirrels.
Okay, got a question though. How old's your dad?
Let's see here. He's just turned 60, maybe 62.
62? Really?
Yeah.
Because when we showed up to your house to go squirrel hunting with my daughter, he comes up and we were like, we're going to go squirrel hunting. And there's gray squirrels, black squirrels, and fox squirrels. And he wants to keep the fox squirrels because they're bigger. And he wants us to shoot the other ones. And he was like, first thing he said when we walked up there, he was like, hey, shoot the black ones. Shoot the black ones. And my daughter's looking at me like, Dad, what's going on? I was like, it's just like an older guy saying, shoot the black ones over and over in the middle of, the middle of nowhere, Rittman, Ohio, yelling at you to shoot the black ones. I'm like, man, I wish we were recording this. But anyways, I digress. So let's start out with you. You said let's define our terms. Define high fence hunting for us, and then I'll define it after that a little bit.
I want to try. I think the best way to define it is like giving examples of what you would consider high fence hunting and what you would consider not high fence hunting, because it's almost like
big tall fence. surrounding an area
I
that
wouldn't.
deer can't get out?
I wouldn't necessarily go that far, because let's go for an example of that. I hunt a lot of times because I'm a retired military. Is what used to be known as Ravenna Arsenal, but now it's called Camp Garfield in Ohio. 36,000 acres on a military reserve. And they do a lottery every year. And since I'm military, I get preferential treatment in this lottery, and I've hunted it probably a dozen times. It is surrounded by a high fence. It's not managed for deer, but there are tons of trophy bucks in this area.
Your biggest buck ever was out of there, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that shot that. Was it 13 point, 15 point?
It was a 14 point, 154 inches.
Okay.
So it's a real nice deer. And I know one of my friends shot a 178 inch buck out of there. And I know a couple other people that have shot deer over 160 inches.
So you've hunted inside of a giant high fence that deer can't. I mean, if there's holes in the fence or whatever, they can kind of get. But for the most part, they're stuck in there.
They're stuck in there.
And people can't just go in there and hunt.
Exactly.
So
but it's not managed for deer. The only reason there's that many deer in there is because they don't allow hunting in there except for these lottery hunts that they use for population control, and it's that because it's a military base. But it's 36,000 acres. It is way bigger than a deer's home area. So would you consider that a high fence hunt? As most people would think about it.
So, okay. So I guess the question then is more how big of an area do you need to have inside of a high fence before it comes a high fence hunt?
Yeah, because those deer were wild. They were wild deer. You were there chasing them like they were wild deer. You were hunting them like any other deer in the state. They behaved like any other deer in the state. They had the same range. They were not confined to, they could travel anywhere in that 36,000 acres. It's like, they were left alone, all but like 3 or 4 weekends a year.
Okay.
So they were completely wild deer.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So
it's like everything you had to do, you had to hunt them like you would any wild deer. Like if I was going to go hunt, I've hunted. I hunt like your mom's property is 96 acres.
Yeah.
It's like I was confined to that 96 acres to hunt, and those deer behave the exact same way on those 96 acres as they did those 36,000 acres.
So let me define high fence hunting. I think that when people say high fence hunting, they don't mean high fence hunting. I think what they mean is farm raised deer. I think that that's what people actually mean, because there's a very big difference. If you're talking like, because I don't even know if it's illegal necessarily to have a wild deer population where you put a big fence around a property and that's 80 acres and they're just wild deer in there and you just go shoot a couple per year. I don't know that that's legal or not.
It depends. I think it depends on why you would have the fence. If there's a reason why you could have the high fence, like, well, if this is for the military, of course, that's their reason, and it's a very valid reason.
Hold on, before we go on past this brings up an interesting point actually. Bill Buzzbice.
Oh yeah,
this was actually our biggest podcast. We had a podcast before, and we had tons of downloads on this. Bill Buzzbice has a property in Louisiana. Yes. Okay, now Bill Buzzbice got busted poaching. Yes. Clearly poaching. He got busted. He bought a governor's tag in Wisconsin to shoot a elk.
That was Wyoming.
Was it Wyoming? Oh, yeah, no, you're right. It was Wyoming. Yeah. His other property's in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So he goes to Wyoming. He goes to shoot the biggest bull in the state. He's paid like $250,000 for this tag to shoot the biggest bull, because this guy's worth tons of money. He owned Wild Game Innovations.
Yep.
He's tied to massive amounts of corruption and just hundreds of millions of dollars of money from the government. I've researched all this. We'll get into it in a second. So with him, he goes to shoot a bull. He misses, reloads, goes to shoot the bull again, misses again. On his third shot, he misses the bull for a third time. Apparently, he needs to practice. And he shoots a baby. Shoots a calf.
Shoots a calf.
Dude, shoots a calf. And then he looks at it and goes, oh yeah, that I didn't pay $250,000 for that elk.
But you
so
did.
But you just killed it. That was your governor's tax. Sorry, bro. He loads his gun back up and then shoots this world-class bull, this 400 and something inch bull. And he didn't know somebody was sitting there watching him the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Somebody in, across the canyon on public land.
Trying to hunt the same bull as he is, but he was on private land because he actually had paid. So I got to be careful because this guy's worth so much money he could sue us. Allegedly, he paid that landowner a bunch of money because the guys who were watching him had permission to hunt this private land for this bull. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, the guy comes and goes, nah, you're not allowed to do it. I'm going to let somebody else. And then Bill Buzzbice, who's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, comes in and all of a sudden has access to this land.
Yeah.
So he presumably paid him off to be able to hunt his land. But he shot the baby. He shot the calf. And then technically, that's your bull. You have to sorry, buddy. Dude, you practice next time. Anyways, my whole point of this is, let me get to my point. He has property in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, this property was a piece of property that he went hunting with Dick Cheney.
Oh yeah.
Okay, him and Dick Cheney went hunting.
That's usually a bad idea.
Yeah, probably don't do that. It's probably a dangerous proposition.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I'm joking, but I'm really not. He goes hunting with Dick Cheney.
We've heard stories.
Yeah, he goes hunting with Dick Cheney on this piece of property. Then, the property comes up for sale. The property sells for, I believe, I would have to go back and check the exact numbers, but these are round numbers. It's pretty close to this. I think the property sold for $85 million. Okay. Then he builds so Bill Buzzbice gets a government contract for $89 million for national security. Right after that, he buys the $85 million piece of property. Then he builds a $4 million mansion on it. There's a TV show that shows this mansion and shows him and his family and hunting on this property. They have tons of deer, and there's a giant high fence all the way around this property. This property is like the size of Rhode Island or something. It's like it's tens of thousands of acres that he bought, and he gets. And now just for clarity, even though I tend to find myself on the right side of the aisle when it comes to politics, he donates max contributions every year to Bobby Jindal's campaign, who's the governor down there. He's always donating.
Is he still the governor?
I don't think so, not anymore. But this is when Bobby Jindal ran for president for 2 seconds before he got 0.0% of the vote. And
yeah,
then,
it happens.
Yeah. But he donates to Republican causes constantly. He donates to the same super PAC that the Duck Dynasty guys were in, and their nephew ran for Congress. He donates to all these super PACs. I had all the research. I had all the super PACs. He donated tens of thousands of dollars to this. Now, this property he bought, he put a fence all the way around it. This super high fence. Now, a guy in the center of a guy owns I think it was 5 acres. I talked to the guy on the phone.
Yeah.
I contact the guy. He's like, yeah, I own 5 acres inside of this $20,000. Hey, Corey, could you pull that up? How big of a property does Bill Buzzbice own in Louisiana? Let's see if you're as good as Jamie Vernon, young Jamie there. Bill Buzzbice property in Louisiana. It's got to be the one in Louisiana because he owns multiple properties. He also has property in Wisconsin where...
Louisiana. Ooh.
Yeah. You can't... Yeah. Louisiana. 55,000... Oh, it was more than I thought. 55,000 acres in 3 parishes. That is an insane... 55,000 acres. And he's got a huge fence around it. And there is a guy down there who owns, I believe it's 5 acres in the middle. I'd have to call him again. I used to call him.
It was 5
it's
or 10.
About, it's 5 or 10
5
acres.
to 10, somewhere around
so
there.
Bill Buzzbice fences off the whole property. This guy cannot get into his property now, right? Bill Buzzbice built everything. The guy sues. And wins. And the judge says, you got to give him access to his property. So Bill Buzzbice, being the great guy that he is, him and his family, what do? They put a giant fence around his 5 to 10 acres so that nothing can get in or out of this 5 to 10 acres. He's like, dude, what? And I talked to him on the phone. I talked to this guy. I talked to multiple people that live right outside of there where he ruined their properties. And we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
Bill Buzzbice puts this property around there. But he puts a gate on it and locks the gate. So the guy sues Bill Buzzbice. Now, you got to remember, this is just a poor Louisiana guy who's got 10 acres to hunt. And he goes to hunt there and he can't. He gets an easement. He goes there. The property's locked. His own property is locked by Bill Buzzbice. Okay, this is what he told me. So, anyways, he sues again, wins again. Then he takes off the lock. Then he relocks it, has to sue again. Bill Busbice has unlimited access to money and power and politicians to a level where people start reporting on it and then they stop. Like there's news articles where they start reporting and then there's no follow-ups. And people were talking to me, these just poor, just redneck dudes from Louisiana, real nice guys. They're the nicest people. And they're like, this guy's like, dude, I just want to hunt my property. And he won't let me. And so he put this high fence around his property, which is a real garbage move to do, in my opinion. That's a real garbage thing to do to somebody, especially when you have 55,000 acres. It reminds me of the story, literally the Bible story where the one guy like forgives the sin of he forgives the debt of the person that has a ton of debt, and then that guy goes and he's like, hey, this other guy owes me a little bit of money, and he throws him in jail. It's like, dude, this is a poor dude who just wants to hunt his 10 acres. What do you care? Just let him hunt. Let him shoot a big buck every year. You have a property that's the size of Rhode Island.
You can hunt anywhere.
You have property in Wisconsin. You have the money to buy the governor's tag in Wisconsin or Wyoming. You have unlimited amounts of money for this stuff. Why are you picking on this dude? And it wasn't even just that. And I know this conversation's gone a little bit different, but it wasn't even just that, because I talked to another guy who his property was right on the outside of this high fence. So Bill Busbice's property butts up against this guy's property, right? Mm-hmm. So there's this huge high fence, and then now there's some controversy here on what is and isn't legal, but my understanding of the Constitution, navigable waters can't be shut off. This is I saw pictures.
Yep, I know it's somewhat a state issue
what is a navigable water?
What is a navigable water and what the laws are.
And I don't know about Louisiana. I didn't get quite that far into it. I never could quite figure out what Louisiana's law was there. Yeah. But anyways, you can get a boat on this river that goes through his property. Bill Busbice puts a fence across it, but people could still get in and out on the river, right? And you're legally allowed. If it's a navigable water, you don't own the waterways. Anybody listening to this, you do not own the waterways. That is 100%. Like this is, if it's navigable waters, you do not own the water. You could own the property under the water. You could own, depending on the state.
Depending on the state, like Ohio, you could own the property under the water. It's like, and I think it's like Montana. I think you can own the water, and people can wade up to the high water mark.
Yeah, in certain states you can.
Like you wade on the bank as long as it's
here we go. Here we go. Here's the law. Specifically, Corey just pulled this up. Specifically under Louisiana Civil Code Article 450, the waters and bottoms of natural navigable water bodies are declared to be public things owned by the state, but the banks of navigable rivers and streams are private things subject to public use. Okay, so here's the thing. What that thing is,
it looks like it's the same as Ohio, except you could walk on the bottom. So like the bed. Yeah. The bed of a navigable waterway. And then
so you could wade on this property. But here's the thing. What Bill Busbice did is he basically took these big rubber, I don't know how to explain them exactly. It almost looks like big rubber conveyor belts. And he stretched them across the water so that you could not get through. Mm-hmm. And he put that on his property. I have pictures that guys sent me of this, and because he did this, it actually screwed up the rivers and it flooded out these people's property that live on the edge of his property, ruining people's property, ruining people's property, flooding out their property because of what this guy did. And he's such a hotshot, and he's worth so much money. And even if we're talking about it, if this got big enough, I'm sure there would be pushback because for some reason nobody wants to talk about it. Even though it's a clear issue of a guy who just owns half of the hunting industry, just doing whatever he wants and screwing people over and just being a all around bad guy, in my opinion. Yeah. I talked to these people, and now they would never. And I published the article. We published the podcast. It did really, really well, but still nothing came of it. I didn't hear anybody else talk about this. Oh yeah. How is that? That's not okay. And I don't think it's legal, but this guy didn't have enough money to continue to sue somebody that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars over and over and over. He just outspent him in court until he's just like, the guy told me, he's like, I just don't have enough money to keep suing and losing to this guy. That's what he told me.
Or not even losing, just keep suing and winning.
And suing and winning and suing and winning and suing and winning. He's just going to tie it up in court forever. Because he's worth so much money, and he's that petty that he's gonna screw this guy. And now let me be clear on this. This was 2019. So I don't know if the two of them resolved this or not, because I haven't looked it up since then. But I just know that my opinion of this guy, and now he had to sell a lot of his stuff and everything after this whole controversy. He lost his permission to hunt in all but 2 states for like 5 years. It should have been longer, because that's the other part of the story we forgot to get to, was when he shot that calf, he shot the big bull after that. He went and got it, and then he had someone come out and bury the calf and hide the evidence.
Oh, yeah.
So the people who were watching went back and looked and told the game wardens where it was at, and they dug it up and found the calf.
Oh, yeah.
That's how he got busted.
Oh, yeah.
Because he tried to cover it up on top of that.
Oh, yeah.
It's just I hate seeing bullies like that, though. Like, that's a bully.
Oh,
That is somebody who is a bully in the hunting industry, and nobody should stand for it. You should not stand for being bullies in the hunting industry like that. It's the thing of everything that we've covered, of all the thousands of articles we've written, the decade we've been doing this. The thing that irritates me more than anything is Bill Buzzbice being such a bully in this industry and screwing over so many little guys. And I don't know. It irrationally pisses me off, even though it doesn't even affect me personally. It just makes me mad because I talk to those people,
Oh yeah, that's
but anyways, I guess what I was getting to there is we'll digress from Bill Buzzbice, and if he ever wanted to dispute this, by all means, there's a microphone right here for you to tell me where I'm wrong. I will invite you. I will fly down and sit in your $4 million mansion on your $85 million property that you got, all that money from the government that was for national security, whatever. And I'm not sure what I am and am not allowed to say, but I'll fly down there and sit down and talk to you about it. I have no problem with that. Yeah. But anyways, my whole point is that high fence hunting. He's got 55,000 acres. He's got something bigger than a state that he got seemingly from the government. He basically got a state out of this. Is that high fence hunting when he's hunting on the inside of that?
Like, personally, I don't think so.
But he's shooting 150 to 200 inch bucks every year in Louisiana that doesn't have very big. Like what's the smallest state?
Rhode Island.
Is it Rhode Island?
Yes.
Oh, so it's half the size of Rhode Island.
Yeah, but
okay,
close enough.
Yeah, still it's still pretty big. The dude got $90 million government contract, and nobody's allowed to see because it's all redacted. I found it. I did all the Freedom of Information Act stuff, and it's just all redacted. You can't see anything what it's for.
Yeah.
The guy makes hunting equipment. What is he doing for the U.S. government for nearly $100 million? Nothing.
Camo.
No. Yeah. He's doing the camo. Then why does it need to be redacted? No, what he's doing is he's being bought off, and then he's donating to Republican causes. This happens on both sides of the aisle.
How do I get that?
Yeah, right. This is what we're working with a couple politicians now, Heidi Workman, and there's some other potentials in there that we might be working with soon. Some bigger deals for social media stuff. We joke around all the time. The closer you get to the corruption, the closer you get to the money. Not really. That's a joke. Heidi Workman's awesome, but that's why we're working with her. But the point is, obviously, when you get to a level of being, worth hundreds of millions or billions of dollars now, you get away with some stuff.
Yeah.
And you get special benefits, and I don't like that.
Yeah. Until you get the special benefits.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Just kidding.
But I mean, for real, if Kamala Harris came up here as the vice president, was like, listen, we're going to give you $100 million contract for fishing lures.
Really? Kamala Harris?
Yeah, she's...
Yeah, I don't know.
Listen, I don't really care who it is.
I don't know. She's probably not that articulate. But still.
No.
But let's go back to bring it back around.
High
fence hunting. It's like that. It's like they're still wild animals at that point. I think that's the big thing. And same thing with the $36,000. 36,000. He's got me thinking money. 36,000 acres at Camp Garfield. They're wild animals, and that's a big land. That's where they're still being wild. They're not confined. But, if they were in a 2-acre pen, is that high fence hunting?
Personally, my opinion is...
I think 2 acres, yeah.
Let me define what I'm okay with and not okay with. I don't care about how big of a fence you have. I don't care how big the property... I don't care... okay. If the area that the deer can roam is at least the size of a natural occurring range, okay, whatever, that's the same as if you had a property that's that big without a fence and the deer are going to stay inside where you can hunt anyway.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't matter. My bigger problem there is when you have high fence deer Man, and I've even changed my perspective on this a little bit after talking to some people who have who grow deer.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it's a different thing altogether to have deer that are raised in pens in barns and grown to be a certain size, and then bragging about killing something seems different to me than killing a natural sized deer. It's like a girl can, it's like a girl coming out and being like, "Look how big my boobs are," when she got fake ones. The real ones are a little bit better. I don't know. This is my preference. It's real boobs versus fake boobs. That's what high fence versus non-high fence, or pen raised versus non-pen raised is to me.
I think pen raised and non-pen raised.
Yeah.
So what
fake
about
ones are nice to look at. So.
Yeah. So what about
we might have to cut that part.
But what about some of those places? I know they've done this in Texas, where they'll take a pen raised buck that has a freaking rack on him. You know what I'm talking about?
Nice rack.
The double D rack. Maybe the triple D rack.
Yeah.
If we're going back to your analogy.
My analogy.
And then they let him loose.
Corey, do not look up triple D racks. What are you typing? Okay, keep going. Sorry.
They let him loose in one of those in their ranch. And he is, I can't even concentrate when he pulled up. But anyways, and he is then set as, he is an off-limits buck. He is our breeder, and he is passing on his genetics to all of the other, bucks.
Shoot, what was the guy's name? I'm gonna be so mad at myself. He's one of my Facebook friends. So I spent probably 4 to 5 hours on the phone with a guy who raises pen raised deer, and his whole thing is like, it's typical deer. He doesn't go for the non-typicals to get 600 inches. And the one question I asked him was like, "Hey man, I hear that these deer's racks can get so big they can break their own necks." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I draw the line there." He's like, I don't like that." He's like, "But with pen raised deer," he's like, "you don't give them steroids because that doesn't grow bigger racks." He's like, you're genetically selecting for certain things.
Yeah.
And you're genetically, then you're giving them proper nutrition and everything. Obviously, that's what you're doing for trying to make them as big as possible, but you're genetically selecting. And because deer have babies every year you can speed this process up to make them different. I mean, how did we turn wolves into Shih Tzus? Yeah, how did that happen?
Oh yeah.
So I mean, obviously you can do some things genetically to affect these racks.
Yeah.
Now some of these deer have gotten so big, and he even told me a story of a deer that was running real fast because it got scared, and when it stopped, it broke its neck. And this was like one of those 500-600 inch bucks. It's just like preposterous amounts of heavy weight.
Oh yeah.
And actually the bigger problem there is there's so much blood that goes to the antlers that it's hard on their heart, because there's as much blood in their antlers as there in their entire body when they get that big.
Yeah, when they're in velvet and all that.
It's much less about the weight of the rack and more about how it can affect their heart. That's just a little insider thing about high fence deer hunting.
Makes me think of
I gotta find this guy's.
Maybe you think about bodybuilders. It's like they got so much muscles and they're all, I would say roided out, but they're all, buffed out that it's not good for them anymore. So especially with when you talk about their heart, they're all got I wouldn't say Arnold, but I've seen some of those pictures of those guys where they all have, all those huge muscles.
All roided out.
Yeah. But, like you said, mentioned, it's it's not the steroids, because the steroids would stop the rack from growing, but it's all the blood in the rack.
Yeah. Man, I wish I could find this whole thing, but I probably won't be able to. But there's an interesting. I just kind of want to shout this guy out because he did spend a lot of time online talking to me about high fence hunting. But I guess the thing that I would say is the main problem that I would have with high fence hunting is less about the deer diseases, which is the next thing. We should segue into that right now, because the big thing about high fence hunting is if you're raising something in a pen, it's not the same thing as if I shoot a 150 inch buck in the wild that I've hunted and stuff. That's a different thing to me than if you raised a buck that made it to 400 inches and then you went to a preserve and you shot that 400 inch buck. Now, you could make the argument, because I've never done it, that that's just as hard if it's on, 10,000 acres inside a high fence, whatever. Maybe you could make that argument. I think that if it's raised in a barn, it's probably a little easier to kill than something that's fully wild. That'd be my assumption. I've never done it, but that'd be my assumption.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the one thing I do want to grant to the high fence hunters, because we teased this at the beginning, is that these guys are testing deer genetically for CWD, and we touched on this in another podcast.
Yes,
but I think it's important to talk about again. They have found an actual gene that they can test for, and deer that have this one gene, then they have the name for it. It's like I don't even want to guess at what it is.
Yeah.
You might be able to find it online. It's gonna be pretty tough. It's CWD resistant gene. Try to see if you can pull up anything. CWD. It said CWD deer gay. Why did that pop up? So there's and this is a little controversial.
Amino acid 25F series 25SS.
Yeah. Okay, so they've isolated this, and the whole thing that a lot of high fence hunters right now are saying is what'll happen is if there's a deer test positive for CWD inside of a high fence, and a lot of us hunters that don't hunt high fence like me and you, and I kind of wrongly believe that all this CWD came from high fence deer, because in Ohio there was a high fence deer that had CWD that got out, and we have a couple CWD areas, which is a problem.
Which is weird, because actually the CWD place where the high fence place where they found CWD isn't near the CWD counties.
Really?
Yeah, because the place they found CWD, the farm is in Holmes County, and the CWD counties are like 4 or 5 counties over.
Huh. See, that's not how it was portrayed. See, there's a lot of nonsense about CWD online, and I know because we did a podcast on this recent thing about did CWD pass to humans, and look, it could at some point. I don't think it has yet, but it could.
It's
still debatable.
It's debatable.
Unlikely. I think it's unlikely.
I think it's probable, but I think it's I don't know if
haven't proven it for sure.
It's very hard to prove.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very hard to say yes, because there's not enough. Like when it went from beef to humans, there was so much. What's the word I'm really looking for? It's like
there's so many humans consuming the beef.
Yeah, so many humans consuming the beef that it was very easy for him to say yes.
And even for years, they were kind of like, no, that's not happening.
Yeah, but with venison, there's not as many humans that they can prove consuming CWD positive deer to be, and there's so many other ways that you can contract CWD, whether it's not quite CWD, but get the Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease. But there's so many other ways that you can't confirm that it came from CWD or one of those other sources.
Yeah,
and it's so hard to say that where exactly it came from CWD positive meat, or you were genetically predisposed
honestly,
to get it. So it's...
Yeah.
And just because it came from beef, I still think it's probable, but to be able to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, I think it's going to be very, 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 very difficult.
But there's enough questions out there that people who want to believe it happened can believe it happened, and people that don't want to believe it happened can believe it didn't happen.
I
think that's what it is.
I definitely agree
our
with
biases that. We have enough information on both sides where our biases can just like, see, look, I'm right.
Yeah, that's why I say it's probable, but it's a sticky wicket.
Yeah, sticky wicket.
Yeah, that's a cricket term if you didn't know.
Yeah, I know. I do know that because you've said it before. But so going back to the solution for CWD with high fence deer hunting, these guys are coming out and they can isolate this gene that we just pulled up here, 96S gene. And this is what the guy talked to me. I will bring him up on another podcast, and we will have him on a podcast at some point. He's willing to sit down and talk to us about it. Very knowledgeable guy, super smart guy. A lot of these people who don't like the restrictions on CWD for hunting, or where they're saying, hey, kill all the deer to save the deer. Their whole thing is, hey, look, when we have a CWD positive deer farm, they kill all the deer. Like, and what they're saying is, hey, look, okay, let's say you're going to kill all the deer off this farm. Okay, fine, whatever. But we've genetically tested this deer, and it's like 20% of the deer, 30%, I forget the percentages, but it has this 96S gene. And when you have that 96S gene, you do not transmit or get CWD, so why not just let those bucks go? And for me, just a redneck kid from Southern Ohio, I'm like, yeah, let these big 300-inch bucks go in the wild and let them breed and pass those genes on. Where if you just go in and you wipe out all the deer, you've wiped out all the deer that can get it, and you've wiped out all the deer that can't get it. So you're always resetting the gene pool every year. And the gene pool is that it can be transferred. So why not actually do something different? Because we've been doing the same thing with deer for decades now for CWD. Why not release these deer into the wild? Why not get a bunch of deer and try to get this 96S gene more prevalent into the gene pool to protect us long term? Why don't we do that? And that's what these high fence operations are starting to find. And I think this is where even guys that don't like high fence hunting can kind of get with the people who do high fence hunting and say, hey, look, we can come together here and have an actual solution, as opposed to just whining and complaining and just looking at our own biases constantly and just believing what we've always believed, as opposed to trying something new.
It makes sense to me. I was like, I've tried to find, why wouldn't we do that? And the only thing that comes to me is like, hey, if we find a solution, there's no more research dollars.
Yeah, that's true. Because, you know what? That's a good point, because I was messaging with Dr. Deer, actually, Dr. Kroll on Facebook just the other day. And I said, well, because he was making the point that he's the most well-researched. I would argue that he's the most well-researched guy on whitetail deer in the industry. He's been doing it for decades and decades and decades. He's been on top of this for a long time. And he says these game agencies in all these states are spending so much money on CWD research. And I'm like, how much? And he's like, they won't tell me. Like, this is a guy who knows a lot. He has a PhD. He's very smart. He's doing his research. He's asking the questions. And he's getting no answers. And he's like, they're spending millions and millions of dollars to accomplish nothing. And not only spending money on research, but they're spending money on the hunt that me and you went on. We went on a CWD hunt in an area where every year they wipe out all the. We were there the last week. We didn't see anything. I mean, there's this area.
We barely saw tracks.
You're talking snow in Ohio in an area that's a draw hunt, and they hunted that thing so hard and killed so many deer off of it. We couldn't find tracks in the mud, in a swamp. We couldn't find tracks anywhere.
Yeah,
there was no deer left.
Yeah, we saw. I think 2 sets of fresh tracks. And by fresh tracks, I mean 2 to 3 day old tracks.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's nothing
we
here.
Had how many acres? Hundreds? 500? 600 acres?
I think it was 200 to 300.
Well, we had 200 to 300, and the guy said you could go in that next section.
Yeah.
Which we kind of snuck onto the edge of it, but still, we covered, let's say 300 acres.
Yeah.
And we saw 2 sets of tracks. There's a small set and a slightly bigger set.
Yeah.
It was like a donathon.
Yeah, it was that one set that we were on the edge that went to towards the one area we couldn't hunt, so we didn't even worry about them. And then there's that.
Oh yeah, and then there's the other set.
There's the other set back
by
in
the road.
Yeah, in that thicket by the road, and we're like, and that was, we couldn't even tell if it was fresh or was a couple days old.
Yeah,
and we're like, let's.
We were there for a long. We hunted for hours and hours. We walked around for hours just trying to find tracks.
Yeah, and then we're like, we got about 6 hours left in the day to hunt. It's like, I could, even though we could gun hunt, like. I could probably go back to my other property and go with a bow and have better luck.
Yeah, it was just silly. Because the first week there they killed like 15 deer, and then the next week it was 9, and then 8, and then 5, and then 2, and then 1, and then 0, and then 0, and then 0. They hunt this area hard.
Yeah,
and every year they find a couple of CWD deer in this area. So It's not working. It's clearly not working. You have absolute evidence that killing all the deer in this area is not getting rid of CWD.
Oh, yeah.
So what are we doing?
Oh, yeah, and they keep finding more and more every year. So it's not like they start out with finding 10 and then 5 and
no,
then
it's
3.
Getting more.
It's getting more.
The numbers are going up. We talked to the guy there. I sat there and talked to that guy because I asked the questions. And, he's pretty vague about it. But he's like, yeah, we found, 1 the first year. And then we found another one the next year. Then we found 2. And then we found 4. And you're like, oh, his numbers are going up. So you're actually not affecting us at all. So why don't we, try to isolate this gene and repopulate these deer with this gene,
or at least try and do something different?
I wish I could find somebody to argue the other side of this, because I love to know both sides of an argument. I can't even find a good argument on this. I can't even find anybody that will talk to me. I find a bunch of people on the high fence deer side that are like, let's look at the numbers, let's look at what we're doing, let's look at the science. The high fence deer people, and this is what blew me away about this. And look, I've never hunted high fence in my life, but these guys at least have a solution, and they'll talk about it. But nobody on the other side will give me a good debate or a good argument that I can even at all. Sorry, let me rephrase it. Not even just give me a good argument. Give me any argument at all why we shouldn't be doing this.
I'll say the closest I get to hunting high fence is, like I said, my hunt in Ravenna, or the Arsenal.
Yeah.
But and so I have like no stake in the high deer or the high fence deer hunting.
No, I'm not going to do it.
Actually, one of my friends just sent me a thing on Facebook. It's like, hey, I just got picked for a Purple Heart hunt at a deer farm up in Michigan. So he's like, hey, you should put in for it next year. So I might do it. So it's going to be free. I'm not going to pay for it, but
go up and do it. Yeah, you'll have something to talk about on the podcast.
I'll have something to talk about it because I'll experience. I wouldn't mind experiencing it. I wouldn't go pay for it unless it's somebody's going to say, hey, I'll take you up to this lodge, feed you and let you go hunt for free. Like, I'll go do that.
Now, this is kind of towards the tail end of this podcast. I kind of want to transition into our next podcast.
Yeah, you're going to transition.
Yeah, it's June. It's Pride Month. But I had on the next podcast, and this is, trust me, I've been researching this for a long time. It's a lot of research to do one podcast. Mm-hmm. There's so many different subspecies of white-tailed deer in Ohio, and we're going to get into all that.
Subspecies of deer in Ohio?
No, there's parts of Ohio that have different subspecies of deer. Yeah. If you're hunting in the United States, depending on what state you were hunting in, you're not hunting the same white-tailed deer. You're hunting different deer in Florida than Ohio, than you are in Wisconsin, than you are in Kentucky, than you are on the west side of Tennessee and the east side of Tennessee. Dude, they're different subspecies of deer in these different areas, and this is something that
depends on who you are. There's like some people like, no, depending on which scientists, like there's like scientist gang wars over subspecies.
Gang wars over
like
subspecies.
Literally it's like, oh,
that goes back to Teddy Roosevelt and John Grinnell Byrd and
yeah, it's like, what is it, like the groupers and the splitters or whatever.
the binomial nomenclature or trinomial nomenclature and but even still, there's some pretty distinct white-tailed deer differences.
Yeah. Like I've killed deer in I think 3 different states, and you look at them like I've got 2 of them mounted. You look at the West Virginia deer and the Ohio deer. Oh, they look different. You can tell.
There's slight differences, and then and we're going to talk about that the lumpers and the splitters and how many subspecies are there and how do these subspecies is that the reason why we're seeing, and this is a correlation I've never heard talked about, but I've been researching and I don't have. I'm looking at the maps of where CWD is. And I'm looking at where the different subspecies of deer are, and we're gonna do a little bit of looking at that and going, okay, well, is there
correlation?
Is there a correlation here? There might be. And looking at it, there's a couple things where I'm like, well, there's this whole areas over here with this subspecies that just doesn't have CWD, and should they have CWD? Why don't they have CWD? It's spread in the different ways it spreads. I mean, if half of the alfalfa in this country comes out of Indiana, and Indiana has, or no, not Indiana. Oh, crap, I forget. So there's one state where like a ton of the alfalfa comes from, and if deer are drooling on that alfalfa, they're putting those prions into the hay that's going across the entire country. So why is there not CWD in every state right now? It doesn't entirely make sense to me. So we're gonna talk about all that. We're gonna talk about the different subspecies, the rack sizes, the color of the coats, do deer depth. There's a study where they took deer from Louisiana and then they moved them up into one of the Midwestern states, and then they bred them again, and because they had different nutrition, they started looking more like the other subspecies. So I've been researching this for a long time and really looking at it over the last.
When we talk about like the white-tailed deer down in South America.
Yeah,
the ones in Europe.
Yeah, there's like I want to say like there's like 19 subspecies, and it's like 13 subspecies in the United States.
Yeah.
And Corey, pull it up. Yeah, subspecies of white-tailed deer. Yeah. Corey's on top of it. He's already putting it in there. How many? Yeah, you have how many subspecies? Put how many subspecies of white-tailed deer? There you go. Because this will give us a better. Because I don't want to. 38. Okay, 13 in North America.
17 in North America.
17. I said 17. And 13 in Mexico and Central America. Yes, 8 in South America. That's what I was.
How many in Europe? Because I know there's some in Europe. Like there's like in Romania and Finland.
So if you're hunting North America, not Mexico, just the United States, Canada, you're talking about
like Czech Republic.
You're talking about having 17 different deer species in the United States and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure, I want to say like, man, I want to be, again, I've got a bunch of notes written down at home because I'm studying this right now. I've been trying to, this is a very complex topic. But if you're hunting in the United States, depending on what state you're hunting in, you're hunting a different deer. And some states, depending on the side of the state, and we're going to go over all that. And I think that's important to kind of look at how it correlates with deer diseases, how it correlates with deer rack sizes, and where you should pick your next hunt. I know we did a podcast on the last year's deer kill and where the big bucks were killed, the non-typicals, the typicals. You know, there's certain deer species like in Ohio where you have tons of non-typicals that are setting records, but not very many typicals that are setting records. But then you go out to Iowa and there's more typical bucks.
Yeah.
You know, so we're gonna discuss that in the next podcast. I'll have that ready for next week.
Yeah.
I should have it ready by next week.
Speaking of the subspecies, you can also, chase the rut. I believe there's like a rut down, in February, like the main rut is like what, Georgia or
the further
Georgia
south you go, because it has to do with
there's a weird rut that just happens completely out of the blue.
Oh, like Georgia?
I think it's Georgia or Mississippi or one of those southern states.
I wonder if that's a deer subspecies thing.
Yeah, there's like a subspecies that
I'll
has
research
a
that.
complete opposite rut than everybody else. And
I'll have to research that
I
because
think it's southern Georgia.
you can actually follow how the rut changes depending on where you're at.
Yeah, but
relative to the equator.
Yeah,
but you're saying this is like an offshoot thing.
This is an offshoot that is totally different than any. It doesn't follow any other pattern. It's just totally different.
Huh. Okay. Well, I'll look that up and make sure I have prepared for that for this next podcast. So
yeah.
But anyways, yes. So let us know what you think about high fence deer hunting. Do you approve of it? Are you open to, even if you don't like high fence deer hunting, are you open to saying, hey, maybe they have the solution for CWD, or maybe they can at least curb it in the right direction? And then,
or do you have anything to add to what we've said? Because like it's a big topic. Do you have anything that you think we missed? Which we probably did, or you have anything you think you can add to the conversation?
Yeah, explain to me where I'm wrong. I would love to know about it.
Because I'm tired of doing it.
And that goes for you too, Bill Buzzbice. Allegedly, I'm saying everything's allegedly. I've been sent notes and letters and messages, so everything with him is allegedly for the lawyers. But please come on my podcast and tell me why I'm wrong. He won't do it. He's too much of a coward, in my opinion. But anyways, we'll see you guys next week. Comment on YouTube or on Facebook, and we get back to all comments on YouTube and on Facebook with the posts that are relative, that relate directly to the podcast. Ask a question, send us a private message. We will get back to every private message, and if you bring it up, we will bring it up on the podcast as well. So if you want to be involved, send us a private message on the Hunting News on Facebook, and we will bring it up on the podcast when we get it. So thank you guys. We'll see you guys next week.